Welcome back to Return My Capital. Today we're continuing on with our ETF review series, and we're going to look at IDV, which is the International Select Dividend ETF from iShares. Truthfully, this is an international high yield ETF. If we take a look at the year-to-date performance, we see it's up 3%. Looking at the 1 year, 10.5%, it's down. 5 year, 17% down, and the 10 year, 19% down. So price appreciation has not done well. If we look at the 52-week range, we're trading slightly over halfway on that. 52-week range is 22 up to 32, and we're sitting at 28 per share right now. This is not one of your low expense ratio ETFs that you might be used to from Vanguard, say, or many others, quite frankly. The expense ratio is 0.5%, so not as high as you would see from some of the thematic ETFs where you're talking near 1% or over 8%, but 0.5% is still significant. Not something you're in love with if you're a long-term investor, but maybe something you're willing to put up with if you're looking for a high-yield product. It does pay its dividend quarterly and pays just under $2 a year, so that yield is 6.5% right now. I've seen it over 7% recently. So it is certainly a high yield product. Assets under management, $5 billion, so it is a large ETF. The ratings from Seeking Alpha grade out to a hold, and the ETF grades are fairly positive. Liquidity is an A, risk B, dividends an A, as you would expect from a 6.5% yielder. Expenses C plus, because again it does have 0.5% expense ratio. Momentum B minus, as it has not done that well, as we just saw over the past year. Again, Seeking Alpha analysts, only 3 covering IDV. All 3 have it as a hold. Let's take a look at the returns over the past year, 3-year, 5-year, and 10-year for IDV compared to the S&P 500. We see over the past year, again, IDV down 10.5%. Compare that to the S&P 500, down 7%. That gap does shrink when we start looking at total returns, because again it has a very high dividend yield. So the total returns over the past year for IDV, 4% decline compared to the S&P 500, a 5% decline. So it has actually outperformed the S&P 500 over the last year when you account for dividends. Let's take a look at the 3-year, 5-year, and 10-year returns. We'll just go total returns. So over the past 3 years, IDV has gained 41% compared to 54.5% for the S&P 500. It is up 13%, that's IDV, up 13% over the past 5 years total return compared to nearly 70% for the S&P 500. Over the past 10 years, IDV is up 38% total return. S&P 500 is up 212% total return. So drastically underperforming the S&P 500 over those longer time durations. So if you're looking for total performance, it has not been the move compared to the S&P 500. However, if you believe that international stocks have been lagging and that it is about time for that to even out and maybe international begins to outperform U.S. Large cap stocks, then well, maybe this is something to look at for if you're looking for a high dividend product. If we take a look at the holdings sector breakdown, a common thing that you'll see with international ETFs is that financials make up a large portion of them. If that's not something you like, which many would say that is the case, they're not interested in having a significant weighting in financials overseas, then this ETF would not be for you. Financials break out to 25.5%, followed by materials, nearly 16%, utilities, nearly 16%, industrials 15.5%, followed by energy, consumer cyclicals, communication, real estate, consumer defensive, and technology, all the way down at just 0.3%. So if you're looking for growth, which we'll get into in a moment here, this ETF again is not for you. It's focused on high dividend yield, and technology doesn't even make up 1% of this ETF. Excuse me. If we take a look at the top 10 individual holdings, you'll see Rio Tinto makes up the top holding with over 5%, followed by BHP Group, British American Tobacco, BTI is 3%. That is a popular tobacco company out of the UK, followed by Mitsui, OSK Lines, a shipping company, Yara International, Aegeus SA. I'm not sure. I'm not familiar. I'm just going to butcher some of these other names. The number 10 holding is Bank of Nova Scotia Financial, I'm quite familiar with. So total number of holdings in IDV is 147. The top 10 holdings, those break out to 28.5%. So it is a fairly concentrated ETF, only 147 holdings. Top 10, again, 28.5% of the total ETF. If we want to take a look at the dividends, really the reason you would buy this product, again, the dividend yield over 6.5% pays out just under $2 annually. 5-year dividend growth rate, 4%. So again, not a dividend growth play, but high dividend yield. And we see a little bit of dividend inconsistency in terms of growth anyway. You'll see it fluctuating. 2012, it was paying $1.63. Well, today it only pays, well, anyway, in 2022 it pays $1.99, but that does fluctuate. In 2014 it was over $2. In 2016 it was down to $1.39. So this dividend yield does fluctuate. Again, the ETF is highly concentrated in financials, materials, utilities, industrials, very cyclical businesses, especially when you talk about something like materials. That's probably a high concentration of mining companies, and so those can be a very volatile business. And taking a look at some of the peers of IDV, you've got a Spider S&P International Dividend ETF, you've got a high dividend yield equity ETF from MSCI. Fidelity's got an international high dividend ETF. The expense ratios on all of those products are slightly lower than IDV. The assets under management on all of those are significantly lower. So IDV is the largest international high dividend yield ETF. The dividend yield on IDV is the highest among its peers. However, the peers I just listed have performed better in terms of price performance over the last 5 years than IDV has. Again, 147 holdings here for IDV, 28.5% assets in the top 10 make that up. So in conclusion, IDV total performance over the last 1 year, 5 year, 10 year, 3 year has not been something you would enjoy if you're looking for total performance over the long term. The yield is certainly there if you're trying to live off of your dividend yield from your investments, but it is lagging international ETFs. It's lagging the S&P 500. So it really just comes down to what you're looking for from your investments. IDV is the largest international high dividend yield ETF. So it really just comes down to what your strategy is with your putting your money to work. So I hope you enjoyed. Quick little synopsis of IDV here. Like I said, this is part of my ETF review series that I'll be rolling out, and I'll link to that playlist I have. You can stay plugged in there as I continue to go over ETFs if that is a strategy that makes up a large portion of your investment. So thanks again for watching Return My Capital. I hope you enjoyed and got something from this. Take care. Let's make some money.